Make sure that they maximise their TAC benefits. A person injured in a transport accident has to do a number of things, most of which seem pretty obvious and straightforward. But first of all, if the accident hasn't been attended by police, they need to report the accident to the police. That's the first thing. Secondly, if they haven't attended a hospital for their injuries following the accident, they should see their local doctor quickly and have the doctor assess them and give a full history of the accident and their injuries to the doctor. Thirdly, they need to put in a claim with TAC, and you can get that process started by calling TAC on their 1300 number. In completing their claim form, they need to include every injury that they have sustained in that accident. They need to include even minor injuries. Very often their treatment will be focused on what may be major injuries suffered in the accident, and very little attention is given to lesser or minor injuries. But in completing the claim form, a person needs to include every injury that they've suffered, even if it's just a cut or a bruise. The reason for that is that down the track, what might have seemed the lesser injury or even an insignificant injury might manifest itself in a more serious way, and to the point where it's giving the person problems, troubling the person, they're needing treatment. But if TAC have not been made aware of that injury from the outset, they're likely to resist acceptance of liability for their injury if it wasn't on the claim form in the first place. I'll just ask the obvious question, well, how do we know this was related to the accident? If it was related to the accident, surely you would have included that on the claim form. So all of a sudden, you're on the back foot in trying to establish TAC accepting liability for that injury. Now, allied to that, it's very important then that if indeed a person becomes aware of what appeared to be a lesser injury, and it might not have been included on their claim form, or even it was included on their claim form, but it's starting to cause them more trouble and more problems, they need to let their doctor know about it. Because very often the doctor too has just been focused on what were the more pressing and immediate injuries following the motor vehicle accident and hasn't taken a history of the bump on the head or the knock to the knees or whatever it might be. So the person in that situation needs to make sure their doctor then does get that history promptly and investigates it promptly, because the situation is the more time is allowed to elapse between the date of the accident and the reporting of that injury, the more likely TAC are to dispute liability for that injury.